Word by Valerie Parker. Thank you. You're a coward, Rumpelstiltskin. It was said with such malice, and yet, there was no malice. There was sadness, yes, but that much he could see in her eyes. They shone blue with hurt and fire and brimstone until there was nothing left. He had once given up his son to the word coward, but also to the words you promised. 300 years and a dark god later, and Rumpelstiltskin was still a coward. But she didn't understand. She didn't understand. Love meant precious things. Love meant value and cherished, and hurting so bad that a tight band fashioned around his heart that drew tight whenever she disappeared on him, popping into the library in between her chores, or that little jump his heart did whenever he heard a crash or heard Belle slip on the stairs. Love meant that he would have to choose. Love meant that he cared enough for Belle to meet the requirements of the curse. The curse that rumbled and growled in the bowels of the dark castle deep below the earth, and through 7 individual wards meticulously placed by him, the Dark One, so that no living soul other than himself could ever get it. Love meant that the Dark One could whisper in his ear as Belle touched his lips with her own. He whispered, "Now you have the power to do what you swore you would." He pushed away, swore and scrambled, smashed and yelled and cursed up a storm outside that waged brave assaults against the windows. He tore off the coverings to the only remaining mirror in the entire dark castle and cast a spell that he knew flung the bitch back at least 10 feet if she hadn't been prepared, and she probably had been the bitch. He threw his little Belle in the dungeon. She had betrayed him, listened to the witch, bitch. She had been sent to take away his power. But somehow that wasn't what hurt anymore. What hurt him was the battle that ravaged a place behind his lungs, him and the Dark One, 2 insurmountable powers, knowing that if one won, the other would lose dearly. He'd done it with Bay, and Bay had been more precious to him than the breath in his lungs. He'd done it with his mother, who had walked away from her husband and the child that she somehow knew wasn't really hers. He'd lost them both, no matter how he'd tried. He was the bloody Dark One. He had all the power in the cosmos. He could make mountains bow and the ocean go silent just because he asked it to. He'd cursed mermaids and made dragons and turned thieves into tiny little puppets. He'd turned murderers into snails and squished them the old-fashioned way, but he couldn't do this. He couldn't carve Belle's heart out of her chest and feed it to the dark flame, however much he wanted to. No matter how much the Dark One commanded him, begged him, told him to use his power for the very thing that he had spent 3 centuries preparing for, bottling hate and fear and jealousy and every other emotion he could name apart from the one he was currently feeling. He couldn't save his own son. How was he supposed to protect this one, somebody that had said she loved him, tricked him? But that feeling behind his lungs, the tight band that hurt every time she left the room, made it so he could barely breathe. Rumpelstiltskin stood outside his dungeon, listening to his slave's little sobs. "Please," he whispered, forehead pressed against the rough stone, far enough away from the locked dungeon door that she could not hear him. "Run away. Run away from me." Thank you.